Now, Sir Keir Starmer has officially launched the party's local election campaign today in the West Midlands and didn't miss an opportunity to deliver a cutting message to the Prime Minister.
I was hoping we'd be launching a different election campaign here today, but the Prime Minister bottled it. He wants one last drawn-out summer tour with his beloved helicopter. So we need to send him another message. Show his party once again that their time is up. The dithering must stop. The date must be set. Britain wants change, and it's time for change with Labour.
Well, the Labour leader was surprisingly and uncharacteristically complimentary of Boris Johnson, admitting the former PM was onto something with his levelling up agenda. Of course, the niceties didn't last, as Sir Keir was quick to point out that Rishi wrecked any chance of actually delivering on the flagship campaign. But don't worry, because Angela Rayner declared that Labour will succeed where the Tories failed and rebuild Britain. So what makes Labour different? Why should voters believe that this party will prevail when so many have failed before them? Well, the answer, if you're wondering, is apparently devolution. In fact, sticking with everyone's favourite milk analogy, Sir Keir promised a full-fat approach. And how will he accomplish that? Well, by introducing acts which would grant more powers for mayors, as well as focusing on clean energy and new tech as part of a strategy that would supposedly create a whopping 650,000 new jobs. In short, Labour say they want to focus on renewing local communities. So the question now is, do you believe them? Will Labour be able to pull off levelling up? And is it really time up for the Tories? We'll open the phone lines on that now, 0344 499 1000. Are they done? Finished? Is that the end? No more? Nothing left in the tank for the Tories? Your thoughts on that? I'm delighted to say that we're joined by journalist Annabel Denham, with us deputy comment editor at The Telegraph. It's interesting, Annabel, listening to... I mean, that sounded a bit like a speech that could have come from sort of anyone over the last 20 years, devolving powers to local mayors. I mean, how many times have we heard that one, for goodness sake? We're going to create 650,000 jobs with literally no detail about how we're going to do it, wheel out a few platitudes, smile a lot, sound a little bit cocky in a good way, and the job's done. I mean, that's called being a politician, isn't it?
Well, it is indeed, and I think your cynicism is well placed, Ian. We have had successive governments promising to level up, or variations on that theme, but failing to do so. I actually think that levelling up is a false promise, and that rather than trapping people in left-behind areas by trying to renew them, often simply by throwing some money their way, what we ought to do is make it easier for people to leave these places by doing things like liberalising the housing market, liberalising planning so that people can go to where the jobs are, or where the jobs are that they can be more productive. That would actually also solve the problems that we have in our labour market at the moment. And if we tried to match the internal migration in Britain with the migration of people coming from overseas, then I think we could see some sort of, perhaps not levelling up in that we're not going to suddenly see this renewal of the towns that were industrial in the 20th century. But we certainly would see an improvement in the lives of many people who are living there.
And I wonder what it really takes to kind of level up. I mean, there's a lot of, we often see images of high streets around the country, or sort of town centres just looking as if they need a bit more than just a lick of paint, places that are really in a bad way. They're not just in the north, as the sort of stereotype suggests. They're all over the place. I don't know what you do in those areas specifically to suddenly make it all look nice and make everybody feel good about the place. And does everybody suddenly get a better job under Keir Starmer? Is that what happens? Keir comes in and everyone's wages go up. He's got this green initiative, which sounds to me like a whole load more taxation coming our way, rather than, what is it? This new green energy, security, development, all these words that get thrown into this. And apparently 650,000 jobs at the end of it all.
I don't think anybody really knows. And spare a thought in for Labour strategists at their headquarters at the moment, who are trying to put some meat on the bones of these various grandiose projects that Keir Starmer is promising. No, we've had hanging baskets on high streets, licks of paint and so on and so forth. And that hasn't led to levelling up across deprived parts of the country. That simply doesn't work. And yet governments insist on trying it time and again. I'm sure that there's more that local councils could be done. It's often very difficult for people to get into towns, park in towns. I think business rates are too high. Perhaps those could be brought down, because obviously you have business rates released for charities, which is why you see a lot of charity shops, particularly on high streets where there are quite high vacancy rates. So there are certainly things that could be done. In terms of creating jobs, what politicians often forget is that actually creating jobs is a cost, not a benefit in and of itself. And it's all very well them framing it in terms of investment, just like Tony Blair first did. But ultimately what we're talking about is government spending on an absolutely massive scale. And the real risk, as with the whole net zero agenda, and the Tories have been just as bad as Labour on this, is that we are going to be first adopters of technologies that actually require more development. We're going to be the ones who are spending enormous sums of money compared to other countries initially, whilst they wait, they see how things play out, they see how the technology evolves, and that's when they start to adopt it. And what we've noticed and what the British public has come to realise in just sort of the last year or so is just how much the net zero plan is going to cost them. And you know, if you survey people and you ask them whether they're in favour of decarbonisation, of environmentalism, of course they'll say yes, we all will. But what people are very worried about, not least in the tail end of a cost of living crisis that saw inflation reach double digits, is how much is it going to affect them in the pocket.